Hey, welcome to another Theological Sidebar. Glad you guys are with us today. It's been a little while. Haven't been here. Intended to last week to drop one of these, but couldn't. Was home, sick, but now I'm better. It's all good. Ready to be back at it. So here's the deal. Going to have a little sidebar conversation about the text that we dealt with on Sunday. And let's go there. Go to Matthew chapter 9 if you get a chance, and look at what we got here. Matthew 9, and let's look at 9, 14, and 15. Then John's disciples came to him saying, "Why do we and Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said, "Can the wedding guests be sad while the groom is with them? The time will come when the groom will be taken away from them, and they will fast." Now, look, the whole context, if you look at verses 16 to 17, that is Jesus discussing why he came. He came to bring in the new covenant. The new covenant is incompatible with the old covenant. That it's not just to be an add-on, but it blows up and begins the whole new work. But that was stated in Deuteronomy 30 and 31. That's in Jeremiah 31. That's in Ezekiel 11 and Ezekiel 36. Those are talking about how, starting with Moses, that the old covenant was not going to stick around. It's not going to work. God would have to, Moses says, circumcise the heart. Jeremiah says he was going to write the laws on the heart in the new covenant. Ezekiel says he would take out the heart of stone, put a heart of flesh, place his spirit within them. So all of that is set. It's already been spoken about in the old. And so when this takes place, Jesus is making it very clear, like, I'm not here to just keep the old. I'm here to start a brand new. It's the new covenant is coming. I think that's what he's speaking about. Now, it's those first two verses, which is interesting as well, because in that conversation, John the Baptist disciples come and they really ask, they ask this in such a way, why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Now, look, they could be asking, hey, Jesus, John's not around anymore. He's in prison at this point. Why is it that we should be fasting, right? It does appear that really what they're asking, though, by saying, but your disciples do not fast, is the real question is, hey, we are all doing this Monday, Thursday, regular fasting, which would have been the practice of Jews at the time, Mondays and Thursdays. But we look and we see that you guys aren't doing it. Why? I think that's an interesting little discussion to have, because here's the deal. Only one time in the Old Testament are observant followers supposed to fast, or commanded to fast. Let's say it like that. The Day of Atonement was the day that God tells everybody that they are to fast, that they are to spend their time in prayer and fasting and focusing on what was supposed to be happening that day. That's the only time that it's commanded. Now, are there commanded fasts in the Old Testament not from God? Yes. So there are times when the people of God would make something, say, let's fast, let's seek the Lord, those kind of things. That is absolutely happens, but those are circumstantial, right? There's nothing lasting in those. When they proclaim a fast, like if you read the book of Esther, she asked the people to fast. Because she's got to go in and she's got to approach the king. And so that kind of stuff is circumstantial. It's happening, but it's not commanded to the people of God that they must fast, right? So, that being said, the tradition of fasting develops. I don't know how it develops, but by the time we get to Jesus' day, you've got Jews that are fasting twice a week, okay? Probably not a bad thing to think about, right? It's not a bad thing for you and I. We'd probably be a lot healthier if we fasted twice a week. And we're talking sun up till sundown, right? So, you skip your meal the night before, or sundown to sun up. Look, here's how you think about this, right? If you're going to fast Monday, so I think technically you're fasting Sunday night, so you skip dinner Sunday night, and then you skip breakfast and lunch, and you have dinner on Monday, right? So that's how that would work, okay? That's probably would be not be a bad thing for many of us to do something like that. And I think lies the point, right? Which is fasting is not a bad thing to do. It's probably a good thing for you to add into your life. Probably a good thing to add in regularly, right? For the Christian, should we at least try to fast one day a year to commemorate something? Sure, fast on Good Friday. I think that's a great way. Or just fast the day that Jews are celebrating Yom Kippur, right? I think that's probably a good way to do it. But here's the problem, okay? So John's disciples are coming, and they're part of this tradition that is developed of we're going to do 2 days a week fasting. And they have a problem that Jesus' disciples don't. Now, here's what I find is fascinating, is that Jesus does not just come and say, well, everybody, we should probably just do this because it's a tradition, right? And everybody else follows it. No, the cool thing about what you see with Jesus is not doing things for the sake of doing them, right? When he says his burden is light, part of that is also like he's not here to add extra. And so with his disciples, when it's something when it's following the commands of the old covenant, they'll do it. But something that's extra beyond that, like you look and see the traditions, like that's not commanded. It's not something mandated for them to do, and so they don't have to do it. Now, granted, Jesus' response is, I'm here. There's no reason for that, right? Well, I'm here. There should be a celebration. And I think that's the main point that he's making is there will be a time to fast, but I'm here right now. No one fasts when you're at the wedding party, right? You need to celebrate. Don't be that guy who tells everybody he's having a diet and he couldn't possibly eat or drink those things and enjoy himself, right? Enjoy yourself. Jesus is here. That's the point. But I do think it's an interesting thing to think about, right? And I think all of us should evaluate and say, okay, are there things that you and I could possibly do that are more tradition than they are actually biblical? Or that they're good biblically, but they're not mandated, right? So are there things that we get all worked up over that really, it's probably good. Maybe there's years of tradition of doing it, but it's not a command that we have to do it. And maybe reevaluate our practice, right? I do think that that's something that is fun to think about. It's fun to kind of reevaluate and recognize that Jesus does not unnecessarily make you do things just because everybody else is doing it, just to make sure you keep the traditions, right? No. If it's biblical, you do it. If it's tradition, okay, do it or not. But there's no reason to get all worked up, and there's no reason to mandate that everybody else do it just like you because you've always done it. And so I don't know. I just think sometimes that maybe there is a good thing for us to kind of reevaluate, right? That, look, here's the point I'm trying to make, okay? If this were a mandated practice, right? And then first off, there would be no discussion because Jesus and his disciples would be doing it. But that being said, since it's not, you don't see them doing it, right? And there are many times even too, you're watching Jesus and the people have all set up what they think the command is all about. So for instance, you follow how he does Sabbath and all that stuff. And the reality is Jesus says, here's what it was really all about. Okay. So that being said, I just want us to begin to think, right? Of what you do, your practices. Maybe there's things that you're in your own church, you get all frustrated over and you say, hey, well, we don't do this program. How come we don't do this program anymore? How come we don't do that anymore? And there's a tendency sometimes for us to get frustrated or to think that we've lost our way because we don't do X, Y, and Z, right? Well, let's pause and just make sure, is X, Y, and Z, are those mandated? And you might find that they're not, right? So I would say if your church is preaching the gospel, if the Bible is being faithfully taught, you're ministering to your people, you're disciple making, you're giving the ordinances, you're doing the ordinances of Lord's Supper, baptism, you're evangelistic. I think you're in a good path. You're in a good direction to head. I think if you begin to argue about programs that we used to have that we don't do, or you begin to argue about, just the old way, the old structure, all that kind of stuff, I think that's where we might find ourselves doing something similar to what John's disciples do. I mean, we could say, how come we don't blank and put that in there? And it might be that we find ourselves saying something very similar. It's traditions. It's stuff like that. Now, tradition's great. I think Baptists could use a little more tradition sometimes because we're and toss out so many great church traditions, but then we've developed our own set. And then we get all frustrated when we don't do the things that we used to do. And I do think this is something we all need to evaluate. All of us are going to compare somehow. John's disciples are comparing, saying, us and the Pharisees, we do these things. You guys don't do them. You should be doing those things, right? That's the comparison that they're making. We do these things. How come you don't do them? Okay? But oftentimes in American church, we do it like this. We compare with church of yesteryear, and we say, our church used to do these things. It used to be so great. And we build up these stories about how wonderful and how healthy. And I'm sure it was. Maybe it was even better, right? And maybe it was at the top of its game at that point. And we talk about all the things that we used to do right. And we compare now with then, okay? You shouldn't do that, by the way, because now is very different from then. Oftentimes. Now, if it's last year, I don't know. Maybe, who knows? But then the other thing we often do sometimes too is we look at the churches down the road and we say things like, how come we don't do what they do, right? Oh, pastor, if you just did what the mega church down the road was doing, how about that one? If I just changed everything that I did, if we could just teach the way they taught, put our slides the way they did, everything like that, then we would do. I will say this. Here's something. I've heard from some of these guys before that, building a church is, 90% sociology or is more sociology than it is theology. Okay? If that is your framework for how you're going to build a church, then count me out, right? Because that's not something, sure, so maybe you've grown a crowd because you know how people think and you know what they want and all that, but have you really actually done what the church is supposed to do? And so I think all of us need to evaluate, okay, so what stuff should we do? And I do think in every context you should be asking, okay, so what are we doing? How do we do this? Are we faithfully doing what we're supposed to do? Are we trying to? And then outside of that, there's a lot of freedom for us to kind of reevaluate our methods, right? So we have the same message, we have what we need to be doing, but let's take some time and let's say, okay, so maybe this doesn't work anymore. Maybe there's a new thing that we have to do. Maybe the neighborhood's changed. Maybe it's time to change course. Maybe it's a change of a program. Maybe it's something different. But I think we need to caution ourselves every time we come and we say, how come we don't do blank? How come this doesn't? Stop and evaluate and make sure the thing that you're asking about, is it what we're 100% always supposed to be doing? Or is this something that you thought it works so great at X church, or it works so great at the church that we were 20, 30, 40 years ago? And then ask, okay, what do I need to do? If it's a preference thing, then do I just need to just say, zip it? If it really was awesome, then maybe evaluate that and see, okay, how can we stop doing it? I don't know why we stopped doing it, Maybe people burn out. I don't know. There's a lot to think about. But anyways, I'm rambling now, and that's about it. So think about that. Let me know what you think. If there's stuff that you think of, that stuff that maybe we've done in the past that we've given up if it's me, you can tell me. But if maybe it's just stuff in general that you see, because there are lots of things that people say, make another video another time. Just things that people say we have to have. We need to make sure that we're doing it in our service. But the reality is, it's not actually commanded that we have to do it. It's more of, if you do some digging, it's more of something that kind of came out of the 1800s that was just kind of been standard in church. So anyways, that's it for now. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, find us on the other ones. If you're watching, find me on the podcast if you want. If you're listening, come find me on YouTube. So, hey, look forward to getting another OTXNT cranked out with Dr. Marquez at some point. We got some guests we need to line up and get some fun stuff out. But until then, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.